I decided to start the divorce because I thought a husband struggling with money wasn't worth much. But my world turned upside down during a business trip when my husband suddenly announced that not only did he want a divorce, but he was already marrying someone else. To make things worse, he accused me of marrying him just for his money and demanded that I give up any claims to our property. When I confronted him, a man who had always been cold and distant towards me, it led to him hitting rock bottom. My name is Ebba, I'm 33 years old, and I was raised by my single mother after my dad passed away when I was in kindergarten. Even though we faced financial challenges, we found happiness as a small family of three. As an adult, I earned a decent salary, but my frugal habits from childhood stayed with me. I married Frederick, a wealthy man I met through a mutual friend. I was attracted to his kindness and the new, exciting life he introduced me to. However, after we got married, we started to have different opinions about money and gender roles. Frederick imagined a traditional household where I would be a stay-at-home wife, but I was dedicated to my career and financial independence. Before we got married, Frederick suggested that I become a homemaker, assuming I would naturally want to take on traditional domestic roles. I told him that I wanted to keep working until we had children, emphasizing the financial benefits of doing so. Although I managed to convince him, the reality of balancing work and household chores proved difficult. Even though I had a full-time job, my days were filled with domestic responsibilities, leaving very little time for us to spend together as a couple. Meanwhile, Frederick, who took on the role of the traditional husband, did nothing to help around the house. Even though he saw how busy I was, he would just come home, eat dinner, and relax. Balancing work and domestic responsibilities began to strain our relationship, and I started to wonder if this was what marriage was supposed to be like. Despite my efforts, I hesitated to express my unhappiness because I feared he might insist that I quit my job. I had hoped that having children would bring us closer and improve our relationship, but sadly, we had grown so distant that I began to doubt if expanding our family was even possible. Feeling the need to discuss this, I approached Frederick one evening. "Hey, we should start thinking about having kids, don't you think?" I asked. "Kids? You're pretty energetic for someone who's always tired from work and chores," he replied dismissively. "It's not about that. I want to have children. We haven't been married that long, but I'm already over 30. Women have a limited time to have kids, and it's getting harder for me to conceive as I get older. It's almost too late. But we don't need kids," Frederick said bluntly. "If we have one, you'll expect me to help, right? You know I'm busy with work, and I won't help with raising kids." Declaring that you won't help with child rearing even before they're born is strange, isn't it? I plan to raise them on my own, but shouldn't you at least want to help? It's your child, too. Raising kids is your job. I'm working to support the family, so I definitely won't help with the kids. You'll just complain that I don't help, making me the bad guy. You must have been brainwashed with the idea that being poor and having lots of kids is normal. We're not poor. We don't need kids. End of discussion, Frederick said, ending the conversation abruptly and retreating to his room. Left alone in the living room, I was overwhelmed with tears. Not only was my desire to have children rejected, but my upbringing was mocked as well. After this incident, our relationship quickly fell apart. We barely communicated, and the idea of having children became more distant. I continued to juggle work and home responsibilities while taking on significant projects at work, but the strain was becoming too much to bear. I found myself growing more and more distant from Frederick. One day, when I told him about an upcoming business trip, his unexpected kindness caught me off guard. He wished me well and even hinted that he had a big surprise waiting for me when I got back. Even though I had already given up on him, his smile made me question my decision. But any hope I had was crushed when I returned home. The front door wouldn't open, and that's when Frederick revealed his first surprise. He had changed the locks. The second surprise was even worse. He announced that he had filed for divorce. He claimed that he forged my signature on the papers and had a friend act as a witness. Inside the house, he handed me a document to sign, which would waive my rights to any of our property. I was shocked and protested his false accusations. I suggested that we both give up our rights to the property, intending to make it a public document. Frederick, stubborn as always, retyped the document on his computer, and we began a tense exchange. As I left the house, he continued to insult me, calling me poor and even threatening to throw out my belongings. A few days later, Frederick called me in a panic. He sounded worried and asked me, "What have you done?" "What do you mean?" "I haven't done anything. Why are you panicking?" I responded calmly. He replied, "I was told to leave the apartment." "Oh, you were still living there?" "That's not allowed." "It's a new month, you're trespassing," I said. "Trespassing? But it's my house. How could you do this?" "Are you okay? Did you forget that it was a company apartment? I was the one who rented it. So naturally, you can't live there anymore," I explained. "That's ridiculous. How could you do this?" "I can't believe you didn't know. I'm not the one who should be accused of doing things on my own. Didn't I tell you that you can't just change the locks of a rental apartment? It's my house. I can change the locks if I want." Frederick insisted. "Didn't you listen? It was my leased apartment. Even if you were the leaseholder, the actual owner is the apartment manager, and you can't change the locks without informing them," I clarified. "Is that so? But why did you terminate the lease so early?" Frederick asked, now sounding more desperate. "Well, while you were busy changing the locks, I ended the lease. I was allowed to live there until the end of the month, but now you've unlawfully altered someone else's property, which could be considered criminal damage," I continued. "Wait, criminal damage? Is that why the police are at the front door now?" "I'm too scared to open it," Frederick admitted, sounding terrified. But I stayed calm and said, "So the police did come. Don't worry, it's probably not for trespassing or criminal damage. It's better to talk to them." "Why do you know about the police?" Frederick asked, confused. "Because I reported you for filing the divorce papers yourself. It looks like you've committed crimes like forgery and fraudulent use of a private document. Divorce papers can be filed by one person, but only if there's mutual agreement and both personal signatures. Since you forged my signature and the witnesses, it's obvious that you've committed a crime," I explained. Frederick seemed completely unaware of his guilt, so I pressed further. "So, the divorce papers you submitted are invalid, and your marriage with Sophia can't happen either." "How do you know about Sophia?" he asked, stunned. "Did you really think I knew nothing? I hired a private detective agency to investigate your affair with Sophia thoroughly. It was a busy time at work, and coordinating with the agency was tough. Plus, you even held a grand wedding ceremony while I was supposedly on a business trip. Are you okay? Did you think my business trip was real? I took leave from work, despite being busy, to do some research and prepare documents. I knew about you bringing Sophia home. It would have been impossible to gather all this evidence while working." After I revealed everything to Frederick, he was completely speechless. I could sense his despair, even over the phone. Then he suddenly pleaded with me, "Please don't tell Sophia I'm divorced." "Why?" I asked. "Why would I? There's no such fact to tell." "Really? Thank you," he said, sounding relieved. But I quickly clarified, "Are you misunderstanding something? When did you become divorced? That fake divorce paper you submitted is invalid, remember? So legally, you're still my husband, not divorced." "What?" Frederick replied, shocked. "And since you committed adultery while still being my husband, Sophia now has to pay compensation. I sent the demand for reparation to her house yesterday by express delivery. She didn't know you were married, right? Well, now it's too late to withdraw the claim. I already knew that Sophia believed Frederick was single, but I deliberately sent the demand for reparation anyway. Since Sophia hadn't contacted me yet, I figured she hadn't received the letter. But it was on its way, and I knew it would arrive soon." I then added, "Shouldn't you be dealing with the police right now? You seem pretty busy." Frederick panicked and said, "I'm ignoring the police. I won't be arrested. I'm going to Sophia's house now to get the letter back before she or her family can accept it." He hung up abruptly, probably rushing straight to Sophia's house to wait for the postman at the front door. But I knew it would be futile because the letter was sent as registered mail to Sophia only. Even if he waited, he wouldn't be able to receive it. A few hours later, Frederick called me again, sounding completely dispirited. He told me what happened when the postman arrived. Apparently, when Frederick tried to take the envelope, the postman asked, "Who are you? You don't live here, right?" Frederick responded, "I'm practically a resident here, since I'm married. I have the right to receive the mail." The postman replied, "I see, but I can't give you this envelope. It's registered mail for Sophia only." Frederick, growing frustrated, said, "What? Give it to me." "Absolutely not," the postman insisted. "If you're so eager, ask Sophia for permission." Just then, Sophia came to the door, confused by the commotion. "Frederick, what's all this noise? What's happening?" she asked. The postman handed her the envelope and said, "This is registered mail for you. This man insisted on taking it. Sorry for the disturbance, but I'll be on my way." Sophia opened the envelope and was shocked. "What's this? A demand for reparation? Frederick, you are married? What's going on here?" Frederick stammered, "Sorry, it's just, she's an ex-wife from a long time ago. I was embarrassed to say I'm divorced. I'm sorry for keeping it secret." Sophia, still puzzled, said, "But it's strange, isn't it? We haven't been dating long, and already there's a demand for reparation. If you were divorced before we started dating, there shouldn't be any problem, right?" Frederick tried to cover it up, saying, "Well, my ex-wife is crazy. Maybe she's demanding reparation out of spite because I got married." But his lie didn't last long. The envelope included a letter I wrote along with my contact information, so Sophia called me directly. During that call, I told her everything, the affair, the invalid divorce, and that they had a wedding ceremony while he was still married to me. Although they had a wedding ceremony, they hadn't submitted the marriage registration yet. Frederick had wanted to submit it on April Fool's Day, so it was still pending. He probably delayed submitting the marriage registration because he was unsure whether the divorce was finalized. After being exposed, Frederick fled from Sophia's house and shamelessly contacted me again. I still had something to tell him, so we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. As soon as I arrived, Frederick said, "Ebba, please withdraw the reparation claim. Let's pretend we've been separated for a long time and officially divorced now. Then I can apologize to Sophia for secretly being divorced and maybe cover it up." I looked at him and replied, "You think I'm desperate to stay married to you?" "I was going to file for divorce anyway," I said, "but since you cheated, you'll have to pay reparation." Frederick scoffed. "Just trying to extort money from me, huh? Typical of the poor. You have such a poor heart." "You're talking nonsense," I replied. "Depending on my answer, everything can change. There's still an option where we don't get divorced. If I say no, you can't reject it, which means you can't marry Sophia and your marital status will be exposed." "Fine," Frederick grumbled. "I'll pay the reparation. Just divorce me now." "Sign here, then," I said, handing him the papers. "About property division?" "Property division?" he snapped. "How much more do you want to take from me? Reparation should be enough. Remember, we agreed to waive property division, right? So, let's make it official." "All right," I agreed. "You're not as bad as I thought." "Thank you." We went to a public notary and made the reparation and property division official. Then we headed to City Hall to submit the divorce papers, finalizing our divorce. Relieved, I exchanged final words with Frederick. "Glad we don't have to divide property," he muttered. "What are you saying?" I responded. "I'm the one who benefits from that. By the way, do you even have assets?" After paying me reparation, Sophia will also claim damages. She mentioned charging you for the wedding expenses. "That's impossible," Frederick exclaimed. "I'm marrying Sophia. She can't claim that. We're divorced now, so there should be no problem." "Still living in a fantasy, I see," I replied. "You committed marriage fraud. You had a wedding while still married. Do you think Sophia still believes you? Marriage fraud? That's ridiculous." "Sophia will believe me," Frederick insisted. "Believe that if you want," I said calmly. But I heard from Sophia directly. "Also, weren't the guests at your wedding paid actors? You still owe them." "You know about that?" Frederick stammered. "I haven't paid them yet. What does it matter to you? You could have just taken property division and been better off." "That's what I wanted to tell you," I said. "Even if we had divided property, you would have benefited more." "What are you talking about, poor woman?" Frederick sneered. Your family is poor, and you only make $230,000 a year, right? Even if you got a raise, it would be barely $20,000 more. You don't have any property. You keep calling me poor, I said. So, I thought you might be mistaken. Yes, my salary is indeed $230,000, but you know I work for a foreign company, right? It seems you have no interest in me, but I became a director of the American branch. It's not $230,000 per year, but per month. $310,000 per month, which means an annual income of $2.6 million. You're still bad with numbers, I continued. How do you manage to keep a job? It's $2.6 million a year, not $260,000. That can't be true, Frederick said, shocked. Of course, I haven't had the chance to spend such an amount, so I've been saving it for the future. The savings from before our marriage aren't part of the property division, but there's still a considerable amount since our marriage. I could have received half of that in the property division. You were my last chance, Frederick muttered. I'll get the divorce papers corrected. Are you okay? I asked. After all the contempt you've shown me, do you think I'd gladly undo the divorce? If you have that much money, you don't need to claim reparation, right? It's just a small amount for you. He who laughs at 2 cents will weep for 2 cents, I replied firmly. This reparation is for the mental anguish you caused me. I'd like to claim more, honestly. And since we've made it official, make sure to pay it, even if it's in installments. I'll be penniless, Frederick said, defeated. Also, I added, don't go back to that apartment. Your belongings should have been moved to your parents' house by now. You thought I had few belongings? Frederick asked, his voice trembling. Your story is truly powerful, reflecting a journey from betrayal and heartache to empowerment and eventual happiness. You've illustrated the importance of standing up for oneself, even in the face of injustice, and how perseverance can lead to a brighter future. The conclusion of your story, where you find yourself in a healthier relationship and on the path to building the family you've always dreamed of, serves as a strong testament to resilience. It's a reminder that, even after the most challenging times, it's possible to rediscover happiness and start anew. The message about the necessity of open communication and the willingness to make difficult decisions, like divorce, to preserve one's well-being is important. It reinforces the idea that enduring in silence isn't always virtuous, and sometimes, taking decisive action is what ultimately leads to healing and growth. Thank you for sharing this with me. If you ever want to explore or develop any part of this further, or need any other assistance, I'm here for you.